Everyone in the neighborhood knew the Mintza family as the quiet ones on the street. Not quiet because they were boring, quiet because life had hit them hard enough to take the noise out of them. When Mr. Mintza died, Diana was in her second year of senior high school. She was 16, the kind of 16 that still had dreams stuck to the walls of her room, cut out from magazines, drawn with colored pencils, folded in her school notebook. She wanted to be someone. She didn't know exactly who yet, but she could feel it, that hunger, that I am going somewhere feeling that sits in your chest when you're young and the world still feels like it belongs to you. Then her father died, and the world stopped belonging to her. He didn't die with money. He didn't die with a plan. He just died and left behind a woman who was already sick, 2 daughters, and a house that suddenly felt too big and too empty at the same time. Their mother, Grace, had been battling a chronic illness for years. While the father was alive, it was manageable. He worked. He paid. He held things together the way a good man does, quietly, consistently, without making a show of it. When he left, everything he had been holding fell. All at once. The medication alone was enough to swallow whatever little money came in. Hospital visits were not cheap. And school fees? School fees were a different kind of problem entirely. Vivian was 13 when their father died. 3 years younger than Diana, small in body but enormous in the brain. Teachers talked about her the way people talk about a rare thing they've stumbled upon. That girl is something else. She read books that were not on her syllabus just because she was curious. She asked questions in class that made teachers pause and think. She was the kind of student that came around once in a long while, and everyone around her somehow knew it, including Diana. Diana was smart too, but Vivian was different smart, and Diana saw it clearly. Even at 16, even in the middle of her own grief, she saw it. The first few months after the funeral, they managed. Neighbors brought food. A relative or two helped with small money here and there. But charity has legs, and those legs get tired. People have their own lives. The help slowed, then stopped, and the bills did not stop with it. Grace tried. God knows she tried. She pushed through the fatigue, through the pain that some days made it hard to get out of bed, and she tried to work. A little trading here, some work there. But her body was not cooperating. The sickness had opinions. It flared when it wanted to, rested when it felt like it, and paid attention to nobody's schedule. One evening, Diana sat at the dining table with her mother's treatment bill in one hand and her school fee notice in the other. She looked at both for a long time. She didn't cry. She just looked. Then she made the decision. She didn't announce it dramatically. She didn't make a speech. She just woke up the next morning with something settled in her eyes, like a door had closed inside her, quietly, without a slam. She told her mother she was going to take a break from school. Just a break, to help things stabilize. Then she would go back. Grace wept. She held her daughter's face and wept in a way that only a mother who knows she cannot fix something can weep. But what could she say? The numbers didn't lie. Someone had to do something, and Diana had already decided she would be that someone. Vivian overheard the conversation. She came out of the room, eyes wide, lips trembling. Diana, no. I'll stop instead. I'm younger. It makes more. You will do no such thing, Diana said. Her voice was calm, not harsh, just final. The way someone speaks when they have already made peace with something hard. But, Vivian, she looked at her little sister, really looked at her. You are the smartest person I know, and I'm not saying that because you're my sister. I am saying it because it is true. You will go to school. You will finish. You will get a good job. That is how you help this family. You understand me. Vivian didn't understand. Not fully. She was 13, but she nodded because the look on her sister's face told her that arguing was not the right thing to do. So Diana dropped out. The market was not gentle with her. She started at dawn, and when people say dawn, they imagine something soft, maybe a little dark, a little quiet. The dawn Diana met at the Kamasi market was none of those things. It was sharp. It smelled of fish and wet concrete and kerosene. It was loud with the sound of traders dragging tables and arranging goods before the sun had even fully decided to come up. She had to wake up before 4 in the morning to go and secure a selling spot. If you came late, someone else took it. No sentiments, no exceptions. So she woke in the dark, washed her face, tied her cloth, and went. She sold everything she could, planting chips, small provisions, whatever she could source and sell with a margin. She learned quickly how to bargain, how to stand for hours without it showing on your face, how to smile at a customer even when your feet were crying, how to count money fast, how to read people. She came home every evening the same way, tired in a way that went beyond the body, the kind of tired that lives in your eyes. Grace would look at her from the doorway, and something in the mother's face would break a little every single time. She tried to hide it. Diana tried to pretend she didn't notice. But Vivian noticed everything. She watched her big sister eat quickly, sometimes falling half asleep at the table before she could finish her food. She watched her count coins at night and write small numbers in a notebook. She watched her wash her own feet, cracked at the heels from the long hours standing, and she made herself a promise. I will not waste this. Not a single day of school. Not a single lesson. Not a single chance her sister was buying for her. And she didn't. Vivian became the student that teachers remembered years later. Not just because she was brilliant, but because she worked like someone who knew exactly what her education was costing. She stayed after school to ask questions. She borrowed books she couldn't afford and returned them in better condition than she found them. She slept less than her mates because she was reading. She treated every exam like it was a matter of life and death because in her mind it was. Meanwhile, Diana grinded. Months turned into a year. A year turned into 2. The bills got paid. Not easily, never easily, but they got paid. Grace got her medication. The lights stayed on. The house stayed theirs. And slowly, something shifted in Diana. The dreams she'd had at 16, the ones pinned to her walls, she had quietly taken them down. Not in anger, just in acceptance. This was her life now. This was what she chose. And she chose it with both hands. She was not bitter. Not yet. She just kept waking up before the sun, tying her cloth, and going. Time does something interesting when you are in survival mode. It doesn't move the way it does for other people. It doesn't flow. It runs. And before you know it, years have passed, and you're standing in a different place than where you started, wondering how you got there without noticing the journey. That was how it felt for the Mintz family. Vivian finished senior high school with results that made her teachers proud in the way that feels personal, like they had something to do with it, like they had touched something great. She got into university, a good one. And the morning the acceptance letter came, Grace held it to her chest and cried the kind of tears that have gratitude and grief mixed together, grateful that her daughter made it, grieving that her husband wasn't there to see it. Diana didn't cry. She just smiled, wide and real, the kind of smile that comes from somewhere deep, from a place where sacrifice and reward finally shake hands. She paid the fees. Somehow, the shop was doing a little better by then. She had found her rhythm at the market, built a small but loyal customer base, learned what sold and what didn't. It wasn't plenty, but it was steady. And steady, when you have known chaos, feels like wealth. Vivian went to university, and she didn't forget for one day what was funding it. She called home every week, sometimes twice. She asked about the shop. She asked about Grace's health. She asked about Diana. Was she eating well? Was she sleeping? Was she okay? Diana always said yes, even when the answer was more complicated than that. For years passed. Vivian graduated. First class. The kind of result that travels through a family like electricity. Everyone feels it, even the ones who don't fully understand what it means. Grace thanked God loudly. Diana thanked God quietly. They took pictures outside the university gates, the 3 of them, and in every single photo, they were holding each other. But then came the part nobody warns you about. The part after the celebration. The part where the world says, okay, you have your certificate. Now go and find your place. And the world does not make that easy. Vivian applied everywhere. Banks, firms, companies, organizations. She dressed up for interviews that led nowhere. She sent emails that dissolved into silence. She got callbacks that turned into rejections. Weeks passed, then months. The only things coming in were internship programs, the kind that pay you just enough to feel like you're doing something, but not enough to actually live on. Transport money, barely. Lunch money, if you were careful. She was frustrated. She was tired in a different way than Diana was tired, not physically, but spiritually. The kind of tired that comes from trying and watching the door stay shut. One evening, she called Diana and said it plainly. I want to come home. I'll help you at the shop. At least we'll be together, and I'll be doing something useful. The line was quiet for a moment. Then Diana said, You will do no such thing. Vivian almost laughed despite herself. It was the same sentence, word for word, the same one from years ago when they were just girls and everything was falling apart. And the tone was the same too, not harsh, just final. Diana, I'm not making any real money. Then I'll send you money. That's not. Vivian, a pause. You did not go to university for 4 years to come and stand in the market with me. I did not pay those fees for that. You keep trying. You hear me? You're too intelligent to give up after a few months. And because Vivian knew her sister and knew when a conversation was over, she said okay. Diana sent money. Not big money. She didn't have big money. But every month something came, enough for Vivian to eat properly, to afford transport to interviews, to keep herself together without the anxiety of an empty pocket clouding her focus. She sent it without drama, without a list of conditions, without making Vivian feel like a burden. She just sent it, the same way she had always done things, quietly, consistently, without making a show. And Vivian kept trying. 2 years of internships. 2 years of almost. 2 years of we'll keep your details on file. 2 years of watching her mates land positions while she kept writing applications. Then one Tuesday morning, Vivian's phone rang. It was the bank, the one she had interned at for the past 14 months. Her supervisor's voice was warm in a way it hadn't been before. The kind of warm that means good news is coming and the person delivering it is enjoying the moment. They had been watching her consistency, her attention to detail, the way she handled difficult clients without losing her composure, the way she came in early and stayed late without being asked. They had a position, a permanent one, with a real salary. Vivian sat down on the floor of her small rented room and cried. Not sad crying, the other kind. The kind that comes when something you've been holding your breath for finally arrives and your body doesn't know what to do with the relief. She called Diana first, before her mother, before anyone. She couldn't even speak properly. She was laughing and crying at the same time, trying to form sentences that kept breaking apart. Diana understood anyway. You got it. I got it. The sound Diana made was not a word. It was something older than words. Something that lives in the body and comes out when joy is too big to be contained in language. They celebrated that weekend, the 3 of them, back in the family house in Kamasi. Grace cooked everything she knew how to cook. The table was fuller than it had been in years. They laughed loudly and talked over each other, and at some point they were all crying, and none of them could explain exactly why, because it wasn't sadness. It was the feeling of arriving, of looking back at the road and realizing how far you walked and how hard the ground was beneath your feet the whole time. Vivian stood up at that table, glass in hand, and looked at her sister. I would not be here without you. Everything I have, everything I am, you made space for it. You gave up your space so I could have mine. I will never forget that. Diana shook her head. We are family, she said simply. That's all. But her eyes were bright, and she was smiling the way people smile when something they sacrificed for finally becomes real and beautiful in front of them. After that, things moved fast. Vivian's salary was good. Better than good, actually. She had worked her way into a role that paid her what she was worth, and she did not take that lightly. The first thing she did was sit down and make a list. Not a list of things to buy for herself. A list of what the family needed. The shop. Diana had been running on a tight budget for years. Limited stock, no real expansion, just enough to keep going. Vivian changed that. She gave Diana money to restock fully, expand the space, hire an extra hand. Almost overnight, the small provision shop became something with actual shelves and actual variety and actual breathing room. The house bills, electricity, water, everything that had been a monthly source of stress, Vivian started paying them months at a time. 3 months at once. 6 months at once. Like she was closing doors on old worries one by one. The fridge, which had been half broken and mostly empty for longer than any of them liked to admit, was replaced. Then stocked, properly stocked. The kind of fridge that, when you open it, looks like a family is being taken care of. And then there was the bigger thing. The thing that had been on all of their minds for years, but nobody said out loud because saying it out loud felt too much like hoping, and hoping had let them down before. The surgery. Grace's condition had been managed with medication for years, daily pills, regular hospital visits, a body that cooperated only as long as it was constantly maintained. There's a surgical procedure that could fix the root of it. The doctors had mentioned it years ago. The cost had made everyone go quiet and change the subject. Vivian paid for it. It took planning. It took months of saving specifically for it. But she did it. And when Grace came out of that surgery and the doctor said it had gone well, and when the medication schedule was reduced to just a yearly checkup, when Grace stood up one morning and said her body felt like her own again for the first time in years, that was the moment that made all of it worth it. All of it. Every dawn, every sore foot, every year of trying and failing and trying again. Grace started going out again, visiting friends, sitting at the shop with the employees, greeting customers, laughing. There was color back in her face, movement back in her step. She looked like herself, the herself from before the sickness had taken up so much space. And she was proud, loudly, endlessly, completely proud, of Vivian. It started small, the way most painful things do. A comment here, a comparison there. Nothing that would stop you in your tracks if you heard it once. But when you hear it over and over, in different forms, from the same mouth, in the same house, it stops being small. It starts to settle, into the walls, into the air, into the person it is being said about. Grace loved both her daughters. That part was never in question. But love and awareness are two different things, and sometimes people who love deeply can be completely blind to what their love is doing to someone standing right in front of them. After the surgery, after the shop expanded, after the house became warm and full again, Grace found a new favorite thing to do. She talked about Vivian, everywhere, to anyone who would listen, at the shop, to customers. You see this place? My daughter did this. My Vivian. She works at the bank, big position, good money. That's my last-born. To neighbors who came to visit. Have you seen how well Vivian is doing? She paid for my surgery, you know, the whole thing. She's building us a house too. My brilliant girl. To relatives at family gatherings, her voice carrying across the room. The engineer of this family. My last baby. God bless me with that child. She said it with pure joy, pure maternal pride. The kind that pours out a mother who has suffered and is finally watching her child shine. There was nothing malicious in it, not one drop. But Diana was always in the room. She would be sitting right there. At the shop she had built from nothing, in the house she had kept alive with her bare hands. And she would hear her mother sing Vivian's praises like a song that had no other verse. And she would smile. Because what else do? You smile. You nod. You say yes, Vivian has done well. You do not make it about yourself. You are the big sister. You are strong. You are the one who holds things together. That is who you are. So she smiled, and smiled, and smiled. And somewhere underneath all that smiling, something was being buried alive. When Nathan proposed to Vivian, the whole family shook with excitement. Nathan Asani was the kind of man that mothers point at and say, that's what I prayed for. He was educated, well-mannered, had a good career, came from a decent family. He looked at Vivian like she was something precious. He was respectful to Grace, warm, easy to be around. He proposed properly, went to see the family, did things the right way. Old-fashioned in the best sense. Vivian said yes with tears in her eyes and a smile so wide it looked like her face couldn't contain it. And Grace lost her mind with happiness. From that day forward, every conversation somehow found its way back to the engagement. Every visit, every phone call, every moment at the shop. My daughter is getting married to such a man. A prominent man. God is good. Nathan this, Nathan that. Vivian is so lucky. They're going to build a beautiful life. My only daughter getting married. That last one landed differently. My only daughter. Diana heard it once and told herself it was a slip, a figure of speech. Her mother didn't mean it that way. She heard a second time and swallowed something uncomfortable. By the third time, she stopped counting. And then came the house. Vivian and Nathan, together, bought Grace a house. A proper one, in a good area, with space and security and everything a woman who had suffered deserved in her later years. Grace wept with gratitude. She held Vivian and Nathan and thanked God and thanked them and thanked God again. She called relatives to announce it. She talked about it for weeks. The house Vivian bought her, the house her brilliant daughter and her wonderful fiancé gave her. People came to see it. People congratulated Grace. People said you raised well. And Grace beamed and said yes, Vivian is a blessing. Diana helped them move in. She carried boxes. She arranged furniture. She hung curtains. And not once did anyone in the room say, "But look at Diana. Look at what she did first. Look at who made it possible for any of this to happen." Not once. She drove home that evening alone. She sat in her car outside the shop for a long time before going in. She didn't cry. She just sat there in the dark, very still, with something moving around inside her chest that she did not have a name for yet. Then her mother started on the other thing. It began gently, the way her mother did most things, wrapped in concern, delivered with love, but landing like a stone regardless. "Diana, you're not getting any younger, you know. When are you going to settle down? Find a good man?" She let it go the first time. "I'm focused on the shop, Mama. The shop will not keep you warm at night." She let it go the second time, too. But then Vivian got engaged, and the comments sharpened. "Your younger sister is engaged to a good man, and you're still here alone. It doesn't look good, Diana. People are asking. You should be thinking about these things. You're the elder one. This should have been you first. What are you waiting for? You're not 20 anymore." Every word was a small cut. Individually, manageable. Together, over time, they opened something. Diana was not unattractive. Far from it. She was tall, full-figured, with a face that had a kind of strong beauty to it, the kind that doesn't fade, that only gets more defined with time. She had warmth. She had presence. She knew how to carry herself, how to talk to people, how to walk into a room. But she had spent her 20s at the market. She had spent the years when most young women were going to parties and falling in love and figuring out who they were. She had spent those years waking up before dawn, counting coins, paying bills, making sure everyone else was okay. She had not had the time to find love. And now her mother was standing over her, pointing at the gap where love should be, as if Diana had simply chosen not to bother, as if she had not given those years away so that her family could eat. She never said that out loud. She swallowed it, like everything else. But here's the thing about swallowing things. There's only so much space inside a person. Diana had been swallowing for years. The exhaustion she never complained about. The dreams she quietly set aside. The praise she never received. The comparison she smiled through. The erasure she pretended not to notice. And now this. She started looking at Vivian differently. Not with hate. She was not a person who could hate her sister. But with something complicated. Something she would not have recognized in herself 2 years earlier. She looked at Vivian's life, the job, the fiancé, the new house their mother lived in and talked about endlessly, and she felt something tighten in her chest. A kind of hunger. Not for things exactly. For recognition. For significance. For someone to look at her the way they looked at Vivian and say, "You matter. You did something. You are not invisible." She had built the foundation of everything her family was standing on, and she was being treated like the floor. Useful, necessary, but nobody looks at the floor. Nobody bends down and says thank you for holding us up. The envy surprised her when she first felt it. She pushed it away, felt ashamed of it, told herself she was better than that. But it came back, stronger each time. And Diana, who had always been so good at carrying things alone, found that this particular weight was different. It didn't make her stronger. It made her someone she didn't fully recognize. She wanted something. She just didn't know yet how far she would go to get it. It was Diana who suggested moving in with Vivian. She framed it practically. Accra was closer to her suppliers. She had been thinking about expanding the business. It made financial sense to cut down on travel. All of that was true, but it was not the whole truth. The whole truth was Messier and lived deeper than logic. She wanted to be close to the life she felt excluded from. She wanted to be inside it, even as a guest, to feel the warmth of it, even from the edge. And maybe, though she hadn't said this to herself clearly yet, she wanted to be seen. By someone, by anyone, in a space where she felt like she had slowly become a shadow. Vivian said yes before Diana finished the sentence. Yes, come, please come. That was Vivian. She didn't overthink it. She didn't weigh the pros and cons. Her big sister, the one who had carried the family on her back for years, the one she loved more than she had words for, wanted to live with her. That was enough. She prepared the guest room herself, bought new sheets, made sure there was space in the wardrobe. She was genuinely, completely happy about it. And for the first few weeks, it was good. Really good. They stayed up late talking the way they used to when they were girls sharing a room. About everything and nothing, about the past, about funny memories, about their mother and her dramatic tendencies. They cooked together on weekends. They argued over what to watch and ended up watching both things. The house had a different energy with both of them in it. Fuller, warmer. Nathan noticed it too. He came over often. He and Vivian were engaged, deep in the planning of a future together. So his presence in the house was normal and comfortable. He was easy to be around. He had that quality some people have where the room relaxes when they enter it. He was funny without trying too hard, thoughtful without being performative. He asked Diana about her business and actually listened to the answers. He treated her like family because that is what she was about to become. Diana liked him. She told herself that plainly in the beginning. He is a good man. Vivian is lucky. This is good. And she meant it. In the beginning, the shift happened gradually, the way water finds its way into a crack. Not with force, but with patience and time. Nathan worked from home most days. His job was the kind that lived on a laptop and a strong internet connection, which meant that on the days Vivian went to the office, Nathan was there. In the house. Available. Diana was self-employed. Her shop had a manager now. One of the reliable women she had hired after Vivian helped her expand, which meant Diana had flexibility. She could come and go. She could decide to stay home on a Tuesday and nobody would question it. So she stayed home on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and then most other days too. It started innocently enough. She would come out of her room mid-morning while Nathan was working and offer to make tea. He said yes. She made it, brought it, sat nearby. They started talking. It was easy. Conversation with Nathan was always easy. He had a way of making you feel like what you were saying was worth hearing. Then she started cooking lunch. I'm cooking anyway. Might as well make enough for two. Nathan thanked her. She waved it off. We're family now. When Vivian came home, she saw her sister and fiancé at the table together, food between them, mid-conversation, laughing about something. She smiled. This was exactly what she wanted. Her two favorite people getting along. Her family expanding in the best way. She had no reason to worry. She didn't worry. But something was growing in that house that Vivian couldn't see because she was not home to see it. It was the hours. The long afternoon hours when the house was quiet, and it was just the two of them, and the conversation went deeper than it had any business going. Nathan talked about things he probably should have reserved for Vivian. Small frustrations, old wounds, the pressure of trying to be a certain kind of man in a world with very specific ideas about what that meant. And Diana listened. Really listened. The way she had learned to listen to people over years in the market. Fully, without distraction, without waiting for her turn to speak. And she talked too, more than she had in a long time. About the years at the market. About what it felt like to watch her family flourish and feel like a stranger in the story. About her mother's words. About the loneliness she carried so quietly that most people didn't even know it was there. Nathan looked at her when she talked, not in a polite, half-listening way. He actually looked at her like what she was saying mattered, like she mattered. It had been so long since someone had looked at her that way. She noticed it. She told herself it was nothing. She pushed the noticing away and carried on. But the noticing came back. Now here is the part that is important to understand. Diana was not a bad person. She was not cold or calculating or cruel. She was a woman who had given more than most people give in a lifetime, who had been slowly, painlessly, almost accidentally erased from a story she wrote with her own blood. She was tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. She was hungry in a way that had nothing to do with food. And standing in front of her was a man who made her feel visible. She was beautiful too. She had always been beautiful in that undeniable physical way that turns heads on the street. But more than that, she had something that years of hard life gives a woman, a kind of heat, a kind of confidence that is not loud, but is absolutely felt. She knew how to be in a room. She knew how to hold a conversation, how to move, how to make someone feel like the most important person in the space. The market had taught her that. Life had sharpened it. And Nathan was a man. A good man, but a man. And good men are not immune to heat. She felt him noticing her. The way a conversation held a second longer than necessary. The way his eyes stayed when they should have moved. She felt it, and it did something to her that she was not proud of but could not deny. It made her feel like someone. Her mother's voice was always there, in the back of her mind. Your younger sister is engaged to a good man, and you're still here alone. And standing next to Nathan, feeling him drawn to her, she felt something in response to that voice. Something that said, "See, I am not nothing. I am not invisible. I am worth wanting too." It was the wrong feeling in the wrong direction, and she knew it. She knew it, but she did not stop. She started making reasons to be near him. Going to his place in the building on days she could have easily stayed in her room. Offering help she didn't need to offer. Lingering in conversations that had naturally reached their end. Touching his arm when she laughed. Small things. The kind that can always be explained away. The kind that, if anyone were watching, could be called innocent. But they both knew. At some point, they both knew. The air between them had changed into something that required honesty to address, and neither of them addressed it. Because addressing it meant stopping. And stopping meant facing what it meant that they had let it get this far. One afternoon, the house was very quiet. Vivian was at a work meeting that ran long. The light through the windows was the warm yellow kind that comes in the late afternoon when the day is deciding whether to stay or go. They had been talking for a while about nothing important, and then the talking stopped and the quiet stretched out, and in that quiet something happened that could not be undone. It was intense. It was real. It was not a mistake that happened because no one was paying attention. It was a choice made in full consciousness by two people who knew better and did it anyway. Afterward, Diana sat very still. The guilt hit her the way cold water hits when you're not expecting it. Sharp, immediate, everywhere at once. She looked at the wall and thought about Vivian. About 13-year-old Vivian begging to drop out so her sister wouldn't have to. About Vivian on the phone, laughing and crying at the same time, saying, "I got it, Diana, I got it." About Vivian preparing the guest room with new sheets and a cleared wardrobe because she was so happy her sister was coming. The guilt was enormous. It sat on her chest like a physical thing. She promised herself it would not happen again. It happened again, and again. Nathan was not innocent in this. Let that be clear. He made his own choices. He reached out. He created opportunities. He was not a passive participant being led somewhere against his will. He was a grown man who was engaged to a woman who loved him completely, and he made the choices he made. But this is Diana's story. And in Diana's story, the guilt was hers to carry, and she carried it badly. Some nights, she lay awake and felt sick with herself. She would decide, firmly, that it was over. She would be cold and distant the next day. She would make herself busy, stay in her room, avoid the shared spaces. Then something would happen. Her mother would call and mention Vivian. How wonderful she was doing, how Nathan was such a blessing, how God had favored her lastborn. And the thing in Diana's chest would tighten again. And when Nathan texted, she went. She was using the wrong medicine for the right wound. She knew it. But the relief, however temporary, however poisoned, was relief. And she was so tired of hurting. Vivian had no idea. She came home to a house that looked normal. Her sister at the table, Nathan in the living room, dinner started, laughter easy. She fit herself into the picture the way you fit yourself into a room that feels comfortable without thinking about it, without questioning it. She trusted Diana completely. This was the woman who had sacrificed everything for her. Suspicion of Diana felt almost like a sin, like an insult to everything her sister was. so she didn't suspect. She just loved, the way she always had. It was a Thursday when everything ended. Vivian's afternoon meeting was canceled last minute. Her supervisor sent a message just after noon. Something came up, we'll reschedule. She was already halfway to the office, and she turned around. On her way back, she stopped and bought a cake from a small bakery near the junction. Nathan's favorite, the one with the caramel top that he always finished before anyone else got a proper slice. She was in good mood. She was thinking about the weekend, about wedding venue options she wanted to show him, about a song she had heard on the radio that she thought should be on their playlist. She let herself into the house quietly, not sneaking, just the natural quiet of someone who lives there and has nothing to hide and is not expecting anything except a normal afternoon. She heard sound from the hall. Her brain processed them slowly at first, the way the brain does when it receives information that does not fit into any category it has prepared for. She stood still for a moment. Then she moved toward the sound because she was in her own house and there was no reason not to. She pushed the door open. The world stopped. Not dramatically, the way it happens in films. Just stopped. Everything she was holding in her mind a second ago, the cake, the weekend, the wedding playlist, all of it fell away, like it had never existed. Her sister, her fiancé. She heard herself make a sound. She was not sure what kind of sound it was. Then her legs stopped working and the floor came up to meet her. She woke up in a hospital bed. The lights were too bright. There were voices. She turned her head and saw her mother's face. And in her mother's face, she saw that Grace already knew. Someone had told her. The expression she wore was one Vivian had never seen before. It was grief and fury and disbelief all collapsed into one face. Nathan was not in the room. Diana was not in the room. Vivian looked at the ceiling and said nothing. There was nothing to say. The thing she had seen was not something that could be talked into a different shape. It was simply what it was. Her mother stepped out for a moment, and in the hallway, in a voice that carried despite itself, she found Diana. Ow! Grace's voice broke on the word. How would you do this? To your own sister? The one you carried. The one you worked yourself to nothing for. You gave up your life for that girl, and then you went and broke her heart like she was nothing to you. How selfish do you have to be? How evil? Diana stood there and took every word. She did not defend herself. She did not explain. She just stood there, silent, tears running down her face, and took it. Because what was there to say? There was nothing to say. She just turned and walked out of the hospital, out into the noise of the city, out into a world that kept moving even though, in every way that mattered, something had just come to an end. Vivian was discharged 2 days later. She walked out of that hospital a different person than the one who had walked into her house with a cake and a good mood and a head full of wedding plans. Something had been removed from her. Not dramatically, not all at once, but the way a fire goes out when you take away what it needs to breathe. Quietly, completely. She went back to the apartment, packed a bag, and left. She didn't go to her mother's house. She didn't want to be held and cried over and preyed upon, as much as she knew it would come from love. She needed silence. She needed 4 walls that had no memories in them. She found a small room to rent. Basic, nothing special, just a bed and a window and enough space to exist without being reminded of anything. She sat in that room for a long time. Work was the first thing to go. She tried. She went back to the office the following week because staying home felt like drowning and she thought movement might help. But her mind was not there. It was stuck in a loop. The door, the sounds, the image that had burned itself into the back of her eyes. She sat at her desk and stared at her screen, and the numbers meant nothing. The reports meant nothing. A colleague would ask her something simple, and she would look at them for a second too long before answering, like she had traveled somewhere far away and was still finding her way back. She missed deadlines she had never missed before. She submitted work with errors she would normally have caught in her sleep. Her supervisor called her in twice, gently the first time, more seriously the second. She nodded and apologized and promised to do better. She didn't do better. 3 weeks after she came back, she was called in again. This time it was HR. They were sorry. They valued her contributions. But performance had declined significantly, and they had given her time to recover, and it had not improved. They had to let her go. She sat in that HR office, and felt almost nothing, which was perhaps the most frightening part. The job that had cost her 2 years of relentless trying. The job her sister had refused to let her give up on. The job they had celebrated with a full table and happy tears. She lost it and felt almost nothing, because what she had lost before the job had taken everything she had left to feel with. She signed what they asked her to sign and walked out into the afternoon sun and stood on the pavement for a while, not sure which direction to go. Nathan called. Many times. He showed up at her mother's house once, which was a miscalculation on his part. Grace met him at the gate with the full force of a mother whose child has been wounded, and whatever he came to say, he did not get to say it. He sent messages after that, long ones, full of explanation and apology, and the particular desperation of someone who has watched something precious slip through their fingers because of their own hands. Vivian read some of them. Not all. The one she read made her feel tired in a way that had no cure. She ended the engagement in a text. Short. Final. No room for negotiation. I trusted you with my future. Don't contact me again. She put the ring in an envelope and asked her mother to return it. She did not want to see him. She did not want a conversation. There was nothing he could say that would rearrange what she had seen with her own eyes, and she was not interested in spending her energy on his guilt. She had her own pain to manage. She could not also carry his. Diana tried to reach her from the beginning. Text first. Careful, short ones. Vivian, I know you don't want to hear from me. I just want you to know I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Then longer ones when the short ones got no response. She showed up at the small room once. Vivian didn't answer the door, though they both knew she was inside. She sent food through their mother. Vivian ate it because she had to eat, not because she was ready to receive anything from Diana's hands yet. She was not ready. She was not even close to ready. Grace moved into the small room with Vivian, uninvited but not unwelcome. She just showed up one morning with a bag and a container of soup and said, "I'm staying for a while," in a tone that was not asking permission. Vivian looked at her mother, older now, healthier than she had been in years thanks to the surgery, but carrying a new weight in her face, and said nothing. Just moved over and made space. Grace did not push. That was the thing about her mother that Vivian needed most in that season. She was there without demanding anything in return. She cooked. She cleaned. She sat nearby when Vivian needed company and moved away when Vivian needed solitude. She prayed quietly to herself without pulling Vivian into it. But one evening, when the room was dim and they had both been quiet for a long time, Grace spoke. "I owe you something," she said. Vivian looked at her. "I talked about you too much." She said it plainly, without dressing it up. "I was so proud of you that I forgot to be careful. I forgot that someone else was in the room. Someone who had given more than you and I put together, and I made her feel like she was nothing. Like what she did didn't count. Like she had been replaced." She paused. "I didn't mean to, but that doesn't change what I did." The room was very quiet. "I'm not saying what she did was okay," Grace continued. "What she did was wrong. It was deeply wrong, and she knows it. But I lit a fire I didn't know I was lighting. And then I walked away from the matches." Vivian did not respond right away. She looked at her hands. She thought about her sister, about how Diana had never once, in all those years, complained. Never said, "Look at me. Look at what I gave up." Never asked for a parade or a monument or even a simple acknowledgement. She had just kept going, quietly, consistently, without making a show. And they had let her. She had not forgiven Diana. She was nowhere near that. But something in her mother's words opened a small door. Not to forgiveness, not yet, but to understanding. To the complicated, uncomfortable recognition that pain rarely has only one source. She started therapy 3 months after the hospital. It was her mother who suggested it first. Then her own body seconded the motion. She was not sleeping well, not eating well, moving through her days like someone walking underwater. Something had to shift. The therapist was a quiet woman with a warm office and the patience of someone who had heard many difficult things and knew that rushing healing was the same as ruining it. Vivian talked slowly at first, then more. Then the sessions became the place where she could say the things that had no other home. She talked about the betrayal, about the anger that came in waves, sometimes soft, sometimes so strong it frightened her. She talked about Nathan, the grief of losing not just a person but a future she had built in her mind, piece by piece, over years. She talked about her job and how losing it felt almost like confirmation of something her worst thoughts had been whispering, that everything good in her life was temporary, that she could not hold things, that she was not meant for stability. The therapist pushed back on that gently but firmly. That is the grief talking, not the truth. And slowly, across many sessions, Vivian began to separate the two. She also talked about Diana, about the complexity of loving someone who had hurt you in a way that felt unforgivable, about the guilt she sometimes felt for not forgiving. Because who was she, of all people, to refuse her sister Grace? Was that not what Diana had given her over and over for years? Grace without limit? Forgiveness is not a debt you owe, the therapist said. It is something you arrive at when you are ready, and you are allowed to not be ready. That gave her permission she hadn't known she needed. For months after everything fell apart, the therapist said something that shifted things. You've been talking about your sister for weeks now, about what she did, about why, about the conversation you haven't had. I think you already know what you need to do. Not for her, for you. Vivian sat with that for 2 more weeks. Then she called Diana. She kept it short. I'll meet you. Once. Don't make it more than that. They met at a small spot near the edge of town. Quiet, no one they knew. Vivian got there first and sat with her hands around a cup of tea she wasn't drinking, watching the door. When Diana walked in, Vivian almost didn't recognize her. Not literally. She knew her sister's face. But the Diana who walked through that door was not the Diana she had grown up with. She was thinner, the kind of thin that isn't chosen. Her eyes had something in them that Vivian had never seen there before, a hollowness, like something that used to live behind them had packed up and left. She sat down. She didn't hug Vivian. She seemed to understand that there were things that had to be said before anything physical was possible. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Diana opened her mouth and she talked. She talked the way people talk when they've been holding something for so long that when they finally release it, it all comes at once. Not neatly, not in order, but honestly. Raw and honest. She talked about the years at the market. Not to ask for credit. She was clear about that. She said it herself. But to explain what those years had done to her. How she had poured herself out so completely that by the time things got better, there was a version of herself she had never gotten to meet. A woman who had skipped her own, becoming to fund someone else's. She talked about the praise. How it felt to sit in a room and hear her mother speak about Vivian like she was the whole story. How she had loved Vivian and been proud of her and felt that pride turning, slowly, into something darker that she was ashamed of but couldn't stop. She talked about the loneliness. The deep, specific loneliness of someone who has always been the strong one, who has never been allowed to not be okay, who has no practice asking for help because help was always something she gave, not received. I didn't want to destroy you, she said. Her voice was low, steady but only barely. I want you to know that. I wasn't trying to take him. I wasn't thinking about forever. I was so tired of feeling like I was nothing. And when he looked at me like I was something, I know how that sounds. I know what I did, but I need you to know that it wasn't about him. It was never really about him. She stopped, looked at her hands. That doesn't make it okay. I know that. Nothing makes it okay. I needed you to understand why. Because you deserve to understand why. Vivian was quiet for a long time. The tea had gone cold. Outside, the city moved past the window, indifferent and busy. When she finally spoke, her voice was even. Not cold, just careful. You mattered, she said. Diana, you always mattered. I never forgot what you did for me. Not one day. I talked about you to people. Do you know that? I told anyone who would listen that I was only where I was because of my big sister. I thought you knew that. I thought you could feel it. She paused. But you took the one person I trusted with my whole future. You looked me in my face every day in my own house, and you made that choice over and over again. And I don't know how to hold both of those things. I don't know how to hold who you were before and what you did at the same time. I don't know if I can. Her eyes were wet, but she didn't wipe them. She let them be. I'm not ready to forgive you. I don't know if I'll ever be ready. But I heard you today, and I needed to hear it. So, thank you for that. Diana nodded. She was crying fully now, not trying to hide it. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't push. She had said what she came to say, and Vivian had heard it, and that was more than she had any right to expect. They sat there a little longer, two sisters at a small table, in a quiet spot, with years of love and one enormous wound between them. Not fixed, not resolved, but in the same room, both breathing. It was not healing yet, but it was the first condition for it. Healing is not a straight line. Nobody tells you that enough. People talk about healing like it has a shape, like you start at the bottom and you move upward and one day you arrive somewhere and you are done. Healed, fixed, ready. It is not like that. It is more like weather. Some days are clear and you can see far and you think, yes, I am getting somewhere. And then the next day the clouds come back and you are right back in the middle of something heavy and you wonder if you imagine the clear day entirely. Vivian learned this the slow way. She found a new job 4 months after losing the old one. It was at a different bank, smaller, quieter, less prestigious than the one she had been at before. The salary was lower. The office was further from where she lived. On paper, it looked like a step backward, and some people, if they were being unkind, might have called it that. Vivian called it a beginning. She showed up on her first day with the particular focus of someone who has lost something and knows, deeply and personally, what losing costs. She was careful with her work in a way that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with intention. She learned the people around her. She asked questions. She stayed a little later than she needed to. Not to impress anyone, but because work had become one of the places where she could be useful and present and not swallowed by the noise in her own head. Her supervisor noticed within the first month, said nothing dramatic, just gave her more responsibility, quietly, the way good managers do when they see someone worth investing in. Vivian received it quietly too, and kept going. The small rented room became her own. She bought a few things to make it feel less temporary. A plant for the windowsill, a rug she liked the color of, a proper lamp for the corner because the overhead light was harsh and she had decided that she at least deserved soft light at the end of a long day. Small things. But the small things added up to something that felt, slowly, like a life being rebuilt from the inside out. Grace came to visit every week. Not to stay anymore. She had her own house, the one Vivian and Nathan had bought her, and she had made peace with living in it even though the circumstances that led to it were now painful to think about. She came on Sundays, usually with food in containers and the kind of steady presence that asks nothing and offers everything. They talked more honestly than they ever had before. About the past, about what the years had looked like from each of their perspectives. Grace did not stop herself from saying hard things about her own role in what happened. She returned to it, unprompted, more than once. Not to punish herself endlessly, but because she understood that acknowledgement was part of repair. That saying "I see what I did" was not a one-time event, but something you had to keep saying until the person you said it to could feel it in their body, not just hear it with their ears. Vivian heard it. Over time, she felt it too. She did not stop being hurt by what her mother had done. The comparisons, the casual erasure, the way praise for one daughter had been wielded like it had nothing to do with the other. But she stopped carrying it as evidence that she was unloved. Her mother loved her. Her mother had also been careless with someone she loved. Both things were true, and she was learning, slowly, to hold them both without needing to resolve them into something simpler. Therapy continued. It became the rhythm of her weeks. The session on Wednesday afternoons where she sat in the warm office and said the things that had nowhere else to go. She talked about Nathan less as the months passed. The grief of that loss softened the way grief does when you stop fighting it and just let it move through you at its own pace. She had loved him. He had chosen poorly. She had deserved better. All three of those things could be true simultaneously, and she was learning to let them be. She talked about Diana more. Not about what happened. She had said what she needed to say at the quiet spot near the edge of town, and she did not need to re-excavate it endlessly. But about the complexity of missing someone you were not ready to forgive. About how love does not conveniently switch off when someone hurts you. about how some mornings she would think of something funny, and her first instinct would be to call her sister, and then she would remember, and the remembering was its own small grief on top of the larger one. You're allowed to miss her, the therapist said. Missing her doesn't mean you have to let her back in before you're ready. Those are two separate things. Vivian nodded. She was getting better at separating things that used to feel like they had to go together. Diana, across town, was living in the consequences of her choices. She had moved out of Vivian's apartment the day everything fell apart and gone back to Kamasi. Back to the shop. Back to the life she had built before any of this. The early mornings, the stock, the employees she had to manage, the accounts she had to balance. The life that had once felt like it wasn't enough was now the only thing she had left, and she held on to it the way you hold on to the one solid thing in a room that is shaking. The shop was fine. Business was steady. The expansion Vivian had funded was still working. More stock, better variety, regular customers who came because they trusted the place. She was making decent money. On paper, she was okay, but the house was very quiet at night. She had never been a person who needed a lot of noise. She was used to her own company, used to silence. She had spent years in a kind of solitude, even when surrounded by people, carrying things alone, processing things alone. But this silence was different. This was the silence of someone who has looked clearly at what they have done and cannot look away from it. She replayed things. Not obsessively. She had too much discipline for that, but honestly, she replayed the moment she chose to stay back when Vivian left for work. The moment she made tea and sat down and told herself it was innocent. The moment she felt the pull and did not walk away from it. The moment she heard Vivian scream and saw her collapse and understood, in her body before her mind caught up, what she had done to the person she loved most in the world. She had always been the protector. That was her identity, the deepest one. The one that had been true since she was 16 and standing between her family and a world that was trying to take everything from them. She had protected Vivian from poverty, from struggle, from giving up on herself. And then she had become the thing Vivian needed protecting from. That knowledge did not leave her. It sat with her at the shop. It sat with her at dinner. It sat with her in the dark before sleep came. She did not try to argue herself out of it or soften it, or find a perspective that made her the victim. She just sat with it because she had earned that discomfort, and running from it would have been one more thing to be ashamed of. She sent messages to Vivian the way you tend to something you're not sure is still alive. Carefully, consistently, without demanding a response. On Vivian's birthday, she sent money in a single line. I hope today is good to you. When she heard through their mother that Vivian had gotten a new job, she sent, I knew you would land on your feet. You always do. When months passed and the silence stretched so long it felt permanent. She sent the message she had been writing and deleting in her head for a long time. I know you may never speak to me again. I understand that. I just want you to know that not a day passes that I don't think about what I did and wish I could undo it. You were the best thing I ever did. Not the sacrifice, not the work. You. Being your sister. Watching you become who you are. I threw something irreplaceable away, and I know that. If you ever need anything at all, I'm still here. I love you more than I ever showed you. I'm so sorry. She sent it and put her phone face down on the table and went back to work. Vivian read it that evening. She was sitting by the window with the lamp on, the soft one she had bought for the corner, and the plant on the sill that she had kept alive these past months, which felt like a small but genuine victory. The city was doing its evening thing outside, settling into itself, the light going orange and then purple and then dark. She read the message twice. Then she set her phone down. She looked at the plant for a while, then at the window, then at the small framed photo she kept on the shelf, the one from the day they had taken pictures outside the university gates, the three of them holding each other, Grace in the middle, laughing, Vivian in her graduation gown, and Diana with her arm around her little sister's shoulder and a smile on her face that was more than pride. It was love, just plain, undecorated love. She looked at that photo for a long time. She did not reply that night. She was not ready to reply, and she had learned in therapy and in the long, slow work of these past months that not being ready was allowed. That healing did not have a deadline. that she owed no one timeline. But something had shifted, something quiet and important. The wall she had built was not coming down. Not yet, maybe not for a long time. But there was a door in it now. Small, not open, but there, where before there had been only solid stone. She picked up her phone again and looked at the message one more time. Being your sister, watching you become who you are. She thought about who she had become. The woman sitting in this room, scarred, yes. Rearranged, yes. But upright, working, healing, tending a plant, keeping a soft light on, building something new from what was left after the fire. She thought about who had made that woman possible. She thought about 4 a.m, about tired feet and dawn markets, and a 16-year-old girl who set down her own dreams so her little sister could pick hers up. She did not forgive in that moment. Forgiveness was too large a thing to arrive all at once. But something else arrived, something smaller and maybe more honest. A recognition, an acknowledgement to herself in the quiet of her own heart. I know what you gave me. I have always known. She put the phone down, turned off the lamp, and went to bed. Outside, the city was quiet. The plant on the windowsill stood in the dark, alive. And in 2 different parts of the same city, 2 sisters lay awake, separately, carrying their separate griefs, their separate regrets, their separate versions of a love that had been enormous and then broken and was now, slowly, painfully, deciding what it wanted to become. Not fixed, not yet, but not finished either. Diana gave up everything so her sister could rise. And in the moment she felt most invisible, most forgotten, she made a choice that cost her everything. Vivian trusted completely, lost everything, and rebuilt herself from nothing. Grace loved both her daughters, and never realized how the way she loved one was slowly destroying the other. None of us can sit here and say what we would do until we were the ones standing in that hospital room, or sending messages into silence, or lying awake wondering if the person you hurt most will ever say your name again. So if you were Vivian, would you forgive her? The sister who sacrificed everything for you, who then betrayed you in the worst way possible. Do you let her back in? Or do you protect the peace you fought so hard to find?